Well, who better than Dennis Shanahan, now National Editor of The Australian, to kick off a busy week of news. We might, Dennis, be into a new week, but it's still the issue of super that was dominating things as it did last week. Those honeypot comments from Labor's Stephen Jones all across the weekend's papers, almost in every cartoon, I might add. I'm interested in your political take here, right? So we have October last year, Jim Chalmers flies a kite on those stage 3 tax cuts. He's done the same thing here, and it's paralysed the government for a week. They're not really able to rule in things and rule out them. It's given the opposition an opportunity to attack them, both on the substance of the super proposed changes, but also from the looming broken promise that it represents. Why pick a fight on super when they so comprehensively ruled out changes pre-election?
Well, Peter, I think that rather than the kite, this is a bit more like a Chinese spy balloon. It has been launched with intent. It is under control and it is causing alarm across the continent. And I think that the part of the problem is for superannuants is that the government is determined to change superannuation. It is undoubtedly a broken promise. There is no doubt about that at all. And what the government is trying to do is saying, we're not going to make big changes. Anthony Albanese is saying, no, they'll just be moderate changes. They're still changes. It's still a broken promise. And so the issue of trust is there politically for Labor from the beginning. The substance of it is also a problem for Labor because what they are attempting to do is using languages a bit like the old class warfare, which, again, the Prime Minister said they would not indulge in. They're talking about rich people. Remember Bill Shorten campaigned on superannuants who are living on the back of yachts and having champagne. Well, this is all about trying to restrict the argument about those on very high incomes from superannuation with very high superannuation levels. But that's just a wedge. We know that, and the rest of the people who have superannuation are very afraid of that. And then you have the greater threat to superannuation from what Jim Chalmers has said from the beginning, and that is he wants to change and define and redefine the purpose of superannuation, including investments of superannuants' funds into low-yielding social infrastructure like public housing. This is a big call from the Treasurer. The Prime Minister has backed it to a degree, and it has really caught fire in the community and given Peter Dutton a complete free run in the last week and for the next week.
What I find interesting, you know, the talk is that they'll put a cap on $3 million as the outward sum. That would give people a pension of about $100,000 out of their own money, a superannuation pension, not obviously a taxpayer-funded one. But at the same time, and of course these people have paid taxes all their life, this is their money that they've put away in a tax-advantaged way, but inside the rule of law, to end up with that sort of money there for their retirement. At the same time as they're going to hit these people who have paid taxes all their lives, this is the same government that will allow people now to have taxpayer-funded childcare, and they can earn $540,000 per household. Surely they can see that none of this adds up.
Well, the childcare subsidy has always been absurd at that level of income. And yet on the other side, they're saying, oh, well, we've now got to set a limit on how much superannuation you can actually have. And what are people who have more than 3 million meant to do? Go out and spend it so that they then turn back and eventually end up on the age pension? The real danger here is the uncertainty in the system. And even the ACTU, which has a current policy of seeking social infrastructure investment, it says, look, we have to be careful about certainty and to stop changing the rules. This is a real threat to the superannuation system.
We'll move on to New South Wales, but it'll be very interesting to see where the Teals sit on this one when Parliament returns, given the affluence of the electorates they represent. New South Wales, I mentioned the dramatic turnaround, if the polls are to be believed, for the Premier Dominic Perrottet. He's narrowed the gap there, Coalition on 48, Labor on 52. That's up 2% for the Coalition since September. And as preferred Premier, he has stretched his lead over Chris Minns by 10 points. 43% of voters backing Dominic Perrottet, compared to Chris Minns. I think he's dropped 2 points there to 33. I say, Dennis, if the polls are right, this is a sign of late momentum for the Coalition. But given how tight the seats are across the board, and talk that even if Labor wins, it's a minority government sort of outcome, where do you think it's likely to land this far out? I know it's crystal ball stuff, but I don't know that people are actually focused on the New South Wales state election. Maybe that's part of the move in the numbers today.
Well, there may also be a federal overlay, a feeling that, the federal Labor's not doing all that well, and so state Labor may be suffering as a result of that. But I think the really crucial numbers here in the news poll are the primary vote. Yes, it's changed around a bit, but not a great deal of difference from the last election. I think the real problem here is for Chris Minns. For Chris Minns as a leader, we're a month from the election and the leader of the opposition is well behind the Premier. Now, it doesn't matter whether it's state or federal. If the leader is way behind the incumbent Prime Minister or Premier, it is a real problem because the leader is not seen as a viable alternative. And I think that Chris Minns' very low target, softly approach has started to have an impact because people don't know who he is, they don't know what he stands for, and although they may think, Dominic Perrottet has done this wrong or that wrong, or he's this, or he believes in this or whatever, at least they have an idea of who he is and they think he actually believes in some things. And given that Labor has to win 9 seats for victory, this is not easy in New South Wales. New South Wales isn't like Queensland or Western Australia or even Victoria, where you see big shifts. In New South Wales, changes of government tend to just come in. 9 seats to get is a big ask, a month out with the leader well behind the incumbent Premier. I think Labor's got a problem, and what we're more likely to see, if we're going to have a crystal gaze, is that it is now more likely that we will have a minority government in New South Wales, probably a coalition minority government given the flavour of the crossbench. But what we're actually seeing is going to be a very close election and possibly not the walkover that everyone expected Labor would have.
Just a quick one. I mentioned this last week on the anniversary of the Ukraine invasion by Russia. 67 of the 81 diplomatic missions that left Kyiv have now reopened. We are still basing our embassy out of Poland. Over the weekend, President Zelensky, asked about the embassy, had this to say.
Would you like to see Australia's ambassador return to Ukraine?
I had big, huge deficit with armed vehicles, and it's very important, yes, moment. And I don't want now to share all information, how many we've got from Australia, but anyway, we've got it, and that is great. That's why to shake hand the ambassador of Australia, I'll do it with pleasure. Please come. Come back.
Okay, we're the largest non-NATO contributor. If Biden can wander the streets of Kyiv, surely we can put our ambassador back there in the capital.
Well, I think that given the amount of support we are giving to Ukraine, the number of Australian citizens who are in the Ukraine, the fact that we are training Ukrainian troops in the UK, admittedly, that we could do with representative on the ground. Now, this isn't to criticise the people who are trying to do it from Poland. I know they have been doing a very good job there from Poland for quite some time. But there comes a time when, risk and all, we do need to be represented along with the rest of the nations who are there in the capital of Ukraine, and that is where we need to be.
Dennis Shanahan, I'll leave it there, but I will tell people you've written a cracker of a column today in The Australian about all the Malcolm Turnbull thought bubbles that blew up and burst, including, of course, Snowy 2.0. But I'll leave it there. I've run out of time. See you next week.